I'm going to lay out a story that I never thought I'd be telling, but here we are. My name is Eric, and I've been married to Melissa for 8 years. We had what I thought was a solid marriage. We laughed together, shared our lives, and even planned to have kids soon. But lately, things started feeling off. There were little signs, but I brushed them aside. The first red flag was when Melissa started coming home late from work, saying she was swamped with a new project at the office. I believed her because she was ambitious, always striving to be the best in her role as a marketing manager. But then came the change in her demeanor. Melissa, who used to be warm and affectionate, became distant and distracted. I'd catch her scrolling through her phone, her expression tight, and the moment I entered the room, she'd quickly switch to something else. I tried talking to her about it, but she'd brush me off, insisting I was being paranoid. "You know how it is, Eric. Work is intense right now," she would say, with an eye roll that felt more dismissive than playful. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. I finished work early and decided to surprise her with dinner. I put on my best shirt, the one she always complimented me on, and whipped up her favorite pasta dish. The house smelled of garlic and rosemary, and anticipation bubbled inside me. But when I checked my phone for the time, I realized she was late, really late. It was already past 8 and she hadn't texted or called. That's when I felt a prick of anxiety. I decided to call her, but it went straight to voicemail. I waited, pacing the kitchen, trying to convince myself that maybe a last-minute meeting had come up. But as the minutes ticked by, my gut twisted more tightly. Finally, just as I was about to lose my mind, she walked in, looking flustered. "Sorry, work ran late," she said, brushing past me to the bathroom. She didn't even glance at the dinner I had prepared. I felt the anger rise, but I held it in, wanting to hear her out. After a quick shower, she came back, her hair damp and smelling of vanilla. We sat down to eat, and I tried to keep the mood light, but I could feel the tension between us. "So how was your day?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Same old," she replied, shoving a forkful of pasta into her mouth. "Just crazy deadlines, you know." I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, on a whim, I decided to check her computer later that night. I told myself I was just going to see if she had any new projects lined up. A bit of sleuthing never hurt anyone, right? When I opened her laptop, my heart raced. The screen was unlocked, which felt like a sign. I hesitated, guilt creeping in, but curiosity took hold. As I started scrolling through her emails, my stomach dropped. There were correspondences with someone named Jake, and they were intimate. They exchanged flirtatious messages, and my heart sank lower with each word I read. It was clear they had been seeing each other, and my world shattered in that moment. The betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. I closed the laptop, trying to process what I had just discovered. My mind raced with anger, disbelief, and a cocktail of emotions that left me reeling. I couldn't wait for her to come to bed. I needed answers. When she finally climbed into bed, pretending to be tired, I knew I had to confront her. As I lay there, my heart hammered in my chest, a storm brewing inside me. Little did I know that this moment would change everything. The confrontation was explosive. "Who is Jake?" I shot at her, my voice sharp and accusatory. A mixture of shock and guilt crossed her face before she dropped her eyes and muttered, "It's not what you think." How could she say that? The truth was clear, and yet here she was, trying to spin a web of lies, and I was caught in it. She started babbling about how they were just friends, but I could tell she was panicking, and the deceit in her voice was palpable. "He's just a ghostwriter for my new project, Eric. Nothing is going on." My anger boiled over at her pathetic excuses, and I couldn't let it go. I demanded to know the truth, but she kept insisting on her story, as if I were the one being unreasonable. The entire conversation felt like a bad dream, one I desperately wanted to wake up from. In that moment, I realized I was standing on the brink of something much deeper, a decision that would define the rest of my life. After that confrontation, I felt like I was living in a different reality. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, visions of Melissa and this ghostwriter, Jake, filled my mind. I tossed and turned, anger and betrayal coursing through my veins. When dawn finally broke, I felt like a shell of myself. I got up quietly, not wanting to wake her. I needed space to think. I went for a run, hoping the physical exertion would help clear my head, but all it did was amplify my rage. The streets around our neighborhood felt suffocating, and every passing car seemed like a reminder of my wife's infidelity. I found myself running faster, trying to outpace the feelings of betrayal that clung to me like a shadow. When I returned home, Melissa was awake, her hair a messy halo around her face. She looked up at me with those big, innocent eyes, and my heart sank. I couldn't believe how easily she could put on an act. I wanted to scream at her to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. Instead, I took a deep breath and decided to gather my thoughts. "Melissa, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She nodded, her expression shifting from sleepy confusion to something more serious. I laid it all out again, the emails, the flirtations, every piece of evidence I had found. As I spoke, I watched her face morph through a series of emotions: surprise, denial, and finally resignation. "I'm sorry, Eric," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Her apologies felt empty. "How can you say that? You've been lying to me." I snapped. "This isn't just some misunderstanding, Melissa. You've been cheating on me." She attempted to defend herself, telling me how overwhelmed she felt with work, how Jake had been a shoulder to cry on, and how it had spiraled into something far more complicated than she ever intended. Each excuse felt like a dagger, twisting deeper into my heart. She begged for forgiveness, promising to end things with Jake, but I couldn't shake the feeling that her words were just that, words. I spent the day caught in a whirlwind of emotions. I vacillated between anger and despair, replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I might have missed. Was I blind to the cracks forming in our relationship? Had I ignored her growing distance, her late nights, the secrets she kept? I felt foolish for ever believing we were solid. Somewhere inside me, a part of me wanted to forgive her. We had built a life together, after all. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt so deeply, screamed that I couldn't trust her again. I remembered the way she used to laugh, how genuine it felt. Now it was tainted by doubt. As the day wore on, I began to think about revenge. It wasn't something I had ever considered before, but the idea took root in my mind. I felt a strange thrill at the notion of turning the tables on her. I wondered what it would be like to pull back the curtain on our lives, to let the world know the truth about Melissa and her little ghostwriter. That evening, as we sat in silence over a cold dinner, I decided to put my plans into action. I would write my own story, a story of betrayal and revenge. I envisioned sharing my experience online, detailing everything that had happened, exposing her for who she truly was. It would be cathartic, a release of all the pent-up frustration I felt. "Eric, are you even listening to me?" She finally snapped, breaking the silence. I turned to her, seeing the desperation etched on her face, and realized she still believed she could win me back, but I was done being the victim. I wouldn't just stand there and let her manipulate me any longer. "You know what, Melissa? I think I need some time to think about everything." Her face fell. "What do you mean? Are you leaving?" "I don't know yet," I replied. "But I'm not going to stay here and pretend everything is fine. I need space." I could see the panic in her eyes, and for a fleeting moment I felt a pang of guilt. But the anger was more powerful. I turned and walked away, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The wheels in my mind were turning. I had a plan, and I was going to see it through. As the night settled, I pulled out my laptop and began to type furiously. I laid out everything: the moments I had missed, the signs I had ignored, the details of her affair. I poured my heart out on the screen, feeling both empowered and vulnerable as I bared my soul to a world I hoped would listen. At that moment, I felt a sense of control I hadn't felt in days. I was no longer just Eric, the betrayed husband. I was Eric, the author of my own narrative, and Melissa's lies wouldn't go unpunished. I would make sure of that. As I poured my heart into the keyboard, the words flowed out like a dam breaking, each keystroke releasing pent-up emotions that had been suffocating me. I couldn't believe the lengths to which I had to go to reclaim my voice. I described my relationship with Melissa, the dreams we shared, and how she shattered them with her betrayal. I chronicled the days leading up to my discovery, the signs I had ignored, the late nights, the secretive phone calls, The more I wrote, the more empowered I felt, as if I were taking back the narrative of my life. I spent hours typing, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and rage. I posted my story online, choosing a platform where I knew it would garner attention. It felt good to share my pain, to let others see the truth behind the facade. I received responses almost immediately, some supportive, others critical, but all were reactions that told me I wasn't alone. It was a relief to know that my story resonated with many people who had faced similar heartbreaks. But amidst all the support, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling of anxiety in my gut. What would Melissa think when she found out? Would she try to manipulate the narrative, spin her version of events to paint herself as the victim? I knew she was good at that, and I steeled myself for the fallout that was sure to come. The next day, I confronted her again. I didn't want to hide behind my keyboard anymore. I wanted to see her reaction in real time. "Did you read what I posted?" I asked. My heart racing. She paled, eyes wide with disbelief. "You posted about us. Eric, you can't be serious. You're making a huge mistake." I crossed my arms, feeling a semblance of satisfaction. Am I, or am I finally doing something for myself instead of letting you control the narrative? Melissa's desperation was palpable. "You don't understand. This could ruin my career. People will think I'm a monster." I couldn't help but laugh, a harsh, bitter sound. "Maybe they'll finally see you for who you really are. You made your choices, Melissa. You brought this on yourself." Her reaction was a mix of anger and sadness, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes. "I messed up, Eric, but I can fix this. We can work through it. I'll prove to you that I can be faithful." I shook my head. "No, you don't get to rewrite this story. You had your chance and you blew it." As she tried to plead her case, I felt a surge of power. I was no longer the hurt husband begging for answers. I was Eric, the author of my own life. And I was done being the victim. I was ready to move on, whatever that meant. Melissa retreated into silence, the weight of her reality sinking in. I could see the wheels turning in her head as she processed the fallout. I had exposed her, and now she was vulnerable, stripped of her illusion. For all her talk of working through it, I knew she was scrambling to regain control. I spent the next few days focusing on my own healing. I started going out with friends, rediscovering parts of myself that had been lost in the shadow of our marriage. It felt good to laugh again, to share stories and memories with people who genuinely cared for me. They listened to my tale, offering words of comfort and solidarity, and I felt their support lifting me higher. But even as I moved forward, thoughts of Melissa lingered in the back of my mind. I knew she would retaliate. She was cunning. So I prepared myself for whatever she had planned. I began documenting every interaction we had, keeping a record of her words and actions. If she wanted to manipulate the narrative, I would ensure I had the evidence to counter her claims. A week later, I received a message from her. She wanted to meet. I hesitated but ultimately agreed. I felt it was time to confront her one last time, to lay everything bare. We met at a small coffee shop, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken tension. I could tell she had been crying, her eyes were puffy, and her hair looked disheveled. For a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy, but I quickly snuffed it out. This was about me now, not her. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she started, her voice shaky. "I realize how badly I messed up, and I'm genuinely sorry. I want to make things right. I love you, Eric." I looked at her, struggling to find the words. "You love me? Is that why you cheated on me?" "Love does betray, Melissa." "I wasn't thinking. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake. I was overwhelmed and I didn't handle it well," she pleaded. "But I've ended things with Jake." I scoffed. "How do I know you're not just saying that? You've lied to me before." Tears streamed down her face as she fought to maintain her composure. "Please, Eric, I need you to trust me again. I miss us." I felt the wall I had built around my heart begin to crack. Part of me wanted to believe her, to hope that we could rebuild what we had lost. But the other part of me screamed to protect myself from further pain. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "Melissa, I don't think I can trust you anymore. You've shattered everything we built together." I paused, watching her expression shift from hope to despair. "I need time. I can't just pretend like nothing happened." "Please, Eric," she whispered, desperation lacing her voice. "I'll do anything." But I knew I had to stand my ground. "I need to focus on myself right now. I don't want to hurt you, but I can't stay in this toxic environment. I have to put my happiness first." I could see the realization wash over her, and with it came a sense of finality. It felt like a door closing, sealing off a chapter of my life that had been filled with both love and pain. I stood up, ready to leave, but not before delivering one last piece of truth. "I hope you find what you're looking for, but it won't be with me. Not anymore." As I walked away, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. It was over. I was no longer bound to the pain she had caused, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, and I knew I would come out stronger on the other side. After the coffee shop meeting, I felt like I had walked out of a storm into clearer skies. Sure, there were lingering clouds of doubt and pain, but the oppressive weight of uncertainty had lifted significantly. For the first time in weeks, I was able to breathe freely. I focused on rebuilding my life rather than dwelling on the wreckage of my marriage. In the days that followed, I threw myself into my work. I started staying late at the office, immersing myself in projects that excited me but had previously taken a backseat to my marriage. I began seeking new opportunities, pitching ideas I had shelved and collaborating with colleagues who shared my enthusiasm. It was refreshing to channel my energy into something productive, and the sense of achievement I felt was intoxicating. I also reconnected with friends, many of whom I had not seen in ages. We ventured out to bars, played sports, and enjoyed spontaneous road trips. Each laugh, each shared story reinforced that I wasn't alone and that my worth wasn't tied to the failure of my marriage. My friends offered support and perspective, reminding me that life goes on, and sometimes the hardest experiences breed the most growth. But amidst all this positivity, I remained cautious. I kept an eye on Melissa, watching her attempts to win back my affection from a distance. She would text me, trying to spark conversations about mundane topics, acting as though everything was fine. I could sense her desperation. Occasionally, I would receive messages filled with apologies, but I had grown accustomed to ignoring them. I had made the decision to prioritize my own healing over her pleas for forgiveness. I also found myself checking the social media posts of our mutual friends. That's when I saw it, the picture that would infuriate me more than anything else. It was a seemingly innocuous photo of Melissa at a party, laughing and carefree, but it was the caption that sent flames of rage through my veins. "So grateful for new beginnings. Here, to moving forward." It felt like a slap in the face. How dare she act like she was the victim? I had exposed my heart, poured out my feelings, and she was acting as if she hadn't just shattered my world. I could almost hear her laughter echo in my mind, the same laughter that used to warm my heart, now twisted into something bitter and mocking. That night I lay awake, fury coursing through me. I opened my laptop and poured my feelings into another post. This time, I wrote about the facade she was maintaining. I called her out not just for her infidelity, but for her blatant attempts to play the victim while flaunting her new freedom. I made sure to craft my words carefully, striking a balance between honesty and dignity. I wanted the truth to be heard, but I didn't want to come off as vindictive. As I hit publish, a sense of freedom washed over me. This was me taking back control, reclaiming my narrative. I turned off my laptop and tried to sleep, but a part of me felt guilty for sharing this new chapter of our lives. Was I crossing a line? I reassured myself that it was my truth to tell. I was no longer the silent husband in the shadows. I was speaking out for all the men and women who had ever faced betrayal. The next morning, I woke up to an influx of notifications. People were sharing my post, commenting, and expressing their support. It was overwhelming but also validating. I wasn't alone in this. Others had walked similar paths and understood the complexity of betrayal. It was comforting to know that I was part of a larger community that empathized with my pain, but with the support came backlash. I received some nasty messages from people who believed I should keep my personal matters private. "Why air your dirty laundry?" they asked. "You're just hurting her more." I tried to ignore them, but their words stung. I had chosen to share my story, and while I understood the sentiment behind their concern, I wasn't remorseful. Few days later, I received an unexpected message from Melissa. "Can we talk?" she asked, her tone softer than before. I could feel the tension build in my chest. What more could she possibly say? I hesitated before responding, but ultimately decided to agree with a begrudging sense of curiosity. After all, I was now in a position to confront her without fear. We met at a small park, a neutral ground, and as I walked towards her, I saw her sitting on a bench, looking small and defeated. The sight of her made my heart twist. Part of me was still angry, but another part felt an undeniable pang of sympathy. This was the woman I had loved so deeply, and it was hard to reconcile the person in front of me with the memories of laughter and love we had shared. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "Hey," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything hanging in the air. Finally, she broke the tension. "I've been reading what you've been posting, and I can't say I'm proud of how things have turned out. I realize how much I've hurt you, and I wish I could take it all back." I studied her, searching for sincerity in her eyes. "You say that now, but what about when you were with Jake? You were happy to keep lying to me then." "I know," she said, tears filling her eyes. "I was selfish. I was scared of losing my identity. I thought I could handle everything on my own, but I was wrong. I messed up, Eric. I thought I could fix it on my own, but I see now how destructive that was." Her vulnerability struck a chord within me, but I couldn't ignore the hurt. "You don't get to play the victim anymore, Melissa. You made your choices." "I know, and I can't change that, but I can change how I treat others moving forward. I'm sorry. I truly am," she said, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, trying to process her apology. "I appreciate that you're willing to acknowledge your mistakes, but I still need time. I'm not ready to jump back into anything, and I don't think we can go back to what we once had." She nodded, and for the first time I saw a glimpse of understanding in her eyes. "I get it, I really do. I just hope that one day you can forgive me." I looked away, knowing that forgiveness would take time if it ever came at all. "I don't know what the future holds, Melissa. Right now, I need to focus on me." And with that, I stood up, feeling surprisingly lighter. I was reclaiming my life piece by piece. As I walked away, I realized I was no longer bound by the weight of our past. I was ready to move forward, to embrace whatever came next, with or without her. I felt empowered, ready to tackle the unknown, and I knew that my story was just beginning. As I continued to navigate my new reality, I could feel the ground beneath my feet shifting. Every day was a lesson in resilience, and I was learning how to rebuild my life on my own terms. I dove deeper into my work, focusing on my career with a renewed sense of purpose. I took on new projects and sought promotions, eager to carve out a path that didn't involve Melissa's shadow. But there were moments when the weight of loneliness pressed down on me. Nights were particularly tough. I missed the companionship we had shared, even in the face of betrayal. I would find myself reminiscing about our late-night talks, the way she would laugh at my terrible jokes, and how we would curl up on the couch together, watching movies. Those memories were bittersweet, reminders of what had been lost. To cope, I started picking up hobbies I had pushed aside during my marriage. I began painting again, something I loved but hadn't done in years. I would set up an easel on my balcony and lose myself in colors, allowing the strokes of my brush to express emotions I sometimes struggled to articulate. It was therapeutic, a way to channel my feelings onto canvas instead of letting them fester inside me. I also kept up my running routine, finding solace in the rhythm of my feet hitting the pavement. I signed up for a local 5K, setting a goal for myself that felt invigorating. The training sessions were a welcome distraction, and I found a community of runners who inspired me to push my limits. With each mile I clocked, I felt more like myself again, more than just Eric, the cheated husband. I was becoming Eric, the man reclaiming his life. But as I started to find my footing, Melissa's attempts to reach out continued. She would text me sporadically, often mentioning how she missed our conversations or how she was working on herself. I didn't respond, knowing that engaging would only open old wounds. I had made the decision to prioritize my healing, and that meant creating distance. One evening, a few weeks after our last conversation, I received a call from my old college friend, David. He wanted to catch up and suggested grabbing drinks at a bar nearby. I jumped at the chance to reconnect, knowing that spending time with friends would help ease the lingering loneliness. David and I shared stories over pints of beer, reminiscing about our college days. We laughed about old antics and caught up on where life had taken us. During one of our conversations, he mentioned that he had started dating someone new and was excited about the relationship. Hearing his enthusiasm brought a smile to my face, and I felt a flicker of hope for my own future. "Eric," he said, leaning in with a grin, "you're going to get through this. You're a great guy and the right person is out there for you. Just give it time." His words resonated deeply, striking a chord that echoed in my chest. It was true. I didn't want to rush into anything, but the thought of new beginnings felt invigorating. The idea that I could find love again filled me with a sense of excitement I hadn't felt in a long time. As the night wore on, David suggested we join a group of friends who were playing trivia at another bar. I hesitated at first, feeling the weight of my past still looming large, but the thought of being surrounded by laughter and camaraderie was too tempting to resist. Before I knew it, we were off, laughter ringing in the air as we made our way to the next venue. The trivia night was a blast. I found myself engaging with new faces, soaking up the energy of the crowd. It was refreshing, a reminder that life was still vibrant despite the storm I had weathered. I spoke with a few new people, and while they were light-hearted conversations, I felt a sense of liberation in sharing my story without delving too deeply into the shadows of my past. That night, I returned home with a sense of joy I hadn't felt in months. I realized that I was beginning to find my way back to myself. I wasn't defined by Melissa's betrayal. I was Eric, an individual with dreams, passions, and the ability to forge a new path. But just as I was starting to embrace this newfound freedom, I received an unexpected message from Melissa late one night. "Can we talk? I need to explain something important," it read. My heart raced at the thought of confronting her again. Part of me wanted to ignore it and keep moving forward, but I also felt a curiosity pulling me in. Was she reaching out to apologize once more? Did she have something to say that would change everything? I found myself torn between the desire to close that chapter of my life completely and the nagging thought that perhaps I owed it to myself to hear her out one last time. I decided to respond, agreeing to eat at the same park where we had last spoken. That afternoon, my stomach was a knot of anxiety. I had no idea what she wanted to say, and I found myself rehearsing potential responses in my head, preparing for whatever curveball she might throw my way. When I arrived, I spotted her sitting on the same bench, her expression earnest and somber. I approached cautiously, noticing the way she held herself as if she was bracing for an impact. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice quivering slightly. "I promise I won't take much of your time." I nodded, unsure of what to say. "What's going on, Melissa?" She took a deep breath, her gaze steady on mine. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last talked. I realized I've been so focused on my feelings and regrets that I didn't consider yours. I know I shattered your trust, and I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, or ever really. But I've been working on myself, trying to understand why I made those choices." I listened closely, feeling a flicker of curiosity but also a protective wall rising around my heart. "What does that mean for you now? I don't expect anything from you, but I wanted you to know that I've ended all ties with Jake. It took some time, but I realized that I was using him as a distraction from the problems in my own life. I know that I need to work on my own issues before I can ever think about being in a healthy relationship again." Her honesty hit me like a wave. I could see she was genuinely reflecting on her mistakes, but I wasn't sure how much it mattered anymore. "Melissa, I appreciate your honesty, but I still need space. I'm learning to be happy without you, and I need to stay committed to that journey." "I understand," she replied, her voice breaking. "I just wanted you to know that I'm changing. I hope one day you can forgive me, even if it's just for your own peace of mind." As I looked into her eyes, I knew that while I could acknowledge her growth, I wasn't ready to revisit our past. "I'm glad you're working on yourself. But I can't go back to what we had. I need to focus on my own healing now." Our eyes locked for a moment, and I could see the depth of her understanding. "I get it. I just hope you find what you're looking for, Eric. You deserve happiness." With that, we parted ways, and as I walked away, I felt a sense of closure settling in. I was moving forward, and this chapter of my life was finally closing. I had taken control, reclaimed my narrative, and learned to embrace who I was becoming. I felt lighter, ready to face whatever the future held without the shadows of my past weighing me down. As the weeks went by, I continued to find strength in the choices I had made. The conversations with Melissa had provided a sense of closure, but they also reinforced the importance of my journey towards self-discovery. I focused on my career, my friendships, and my own well-being. Life was beginning to feel vibrant again, and I welcomed each day as a chance to explore new possibilities. One evening, I decided to attend a local art exhibit opening, a gathering I had initially been hesitant about. The thought of mingling in a space filled with people I didn't know, all while carrying the weight of my past, felt daunting. But I also recognized that pushing myself out of my comfort zone was essential for my growth. I donned my best outfit and headed out, determined to embrace the night. The exhibit was bustling with energy, filled with vibrant art and the buzz of conversation. I wandered through the gallery, admiring the pieces on display while sipping a glass of wine. As I scanned the room, I locked eyes with a woman across the way. She had an infectious smile and an ease about her that drew me in. Her name was Sarah, and we struck up a conversation that flowed effortlessly. We talked about art, passion, and the complexities of life. I found myself laughing and sharing stories, allowing the walls I had built around myself to begin to crumble. Sarah's energy was contagious, and she exuded a warmth that felt inviting rather than intimidating. As the night wore on, I realized how comfortable I felt in her presence. It was exhilarating to connect with someone new without the baggage of my past weighing heavily on our conversation. I shared snippets of my journey, how I had faced heartbreak but was determined to find my footing once again. She listened attentively, her empathy shining through. "I admire your courage, Eric," Sarah said, her eyes sparkling. "It's not easy to pick up the pieces and start anew, but it sounds like you're on the right path." Her words struck a chord within me. I felt a sense of validation, knowing that I was indeed moving forward. As we exchanged contact information at the end of the night, I felt a sense of hope blossoming inside me. It was the first time in a long while that I had considered the possibility of a new romance, and it filled me with excitement instead of fear. In the days that followed, Sarah and I continued to connect. We went on coffee dates, exploring local spots and sharing pieces of our lives. She had her own story, her journey through loss and recovery, and as we opened up to each other, I felt an undeniable chemistry building between us. Being with her felt different. It was refreshing and invigorating. I was no longer weighed down by the past, but instead motivated by the potential of a bright future. One weekend, we went hiking in the mountains, surrounded by nature's beauty. As we reached the summit, the view stretched out before us, breathtaking and vast. I turned to Sarah, feeling a rush of gratitude for the new chapter unfolding in my life. "I never thought I'd find myself here again," I said, smiling. "Neither did I," she replied, a twinkle in her eye. "But sometimes you have to let go of what's holding you back to discover something amazing." Her words resonated deeply within me. It was a reminder of how far I had come, from the pain of betrayal to the joy of new beginnings. I had reclaimed my narrative, and I was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. As our relationship blossomed, I reflected on the lessons I had learned over the past few months. I realized that vulnerability can be both terrifying and liberating. I had faced my pain head-on, confronted the truth of my experiences, and ultimately chosen to rise above it. It was a journey of self-love and acceptance, one that had strengthened my resolve to pursue happiness, even in the face of heartbreak. In the weeks that followed, I found myself looking back at the moments I had shared with Melissa. I had loved her deeply, and even though that love had turned to ash, it had taught me invaluable lessons about trust, communication, and the importance of prioritizing my own well-being. I was no longer a victim of circumstances. I was the architect of my own happiness. As I stood on that mountain, hand in hand with Sarah, I felt a sense of peace settle within me. I had emerged from the storm, and the horizon was wide open. I was ready to embrace life with all its uncertainties, knowing that I could navigate whatever challenges came my way. The journey wasn't over, it was just beginning. I had learned to trust myself again, to open my heart to new possibilities, and to forge connections grounded in authenticity and mutual respect. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but I felt equipped to face it head-on, with courage and hope. And as I gazed out at the breathtaking view, I realized that the best was yet to come.